Today's show is sponsored by Indie Film Hustle's Filmmaker Process. We provide filmmakers with professional services to get their films or series funded, finished, and distributed. For more information, go to filmmakerprocess.com.
And I decided to write the Buffy spec. And I always wondered where my career would have gone if I went NYPD Blue. So I write this Buffy spec called Xander the Slayer. And it was basically Xander accidentally gets Buffy's powers transferred to him. And it was all about why men can't be slayers. Because basically it goes to their heads and they become uncontrollable. So I finished the script, and my friend Lizzie Weiss, who had worked on Undressed, she was repped at UTA. So I call up Lizzie and I say, "Oh, Lizzie, could you pass the script to your agent?" And she said, yeah, sure. So she passes it over to UTA, and then a couple of weeks later I get a call that says, they liked it, but they just don't think it's for them. So I'm like, oh, well, that's disappointing. So I gave it to my feature agent, who literally only knew 3 people in TV. But one of them was the head of Joss Whedon's company. So it gets over there. They read it. They like it. I go over and I interview for a job on the animated show that Jeff Loeb is trying to get off the ground. But at the end of this interview, they say, but Joss has to read it. And just to warn you, he usually doesn't like Buffy specs. I go, oh, okay, great. So they give it to Joss, and a couple of weeks later, I get a call that he wants to talk to me. I go in and we talk about movies and comic books. And at the end, he says, I know you were talking about the animated show, but do you want to come do an episode of the live action show? And I was like, hell yes. So I did a freelance of the live action show, and they invited me to the production meeting. And after that was over, they told me to hang around. So I was sitting in this big empty room for like 15 minutes wondering, what do you need, more rewrites? What do you want? And then a PA popped up and took me down to the Magic Box set. And Joss was there in Oxon, and they said, look, we like you. We like your work. You want to come join us full time? And I just about burst into man tears because it was my absolute favorite show on TV. And I loved all the writers that I'd been working with. So I said, absolutely, of course. So I always really consider that the real start of my career. That's when things really started to happen for me.
Right.
And again, all based on a spec. And, there's this thing that goes around town where people say, you can never get hired on the show if you write a spec for that show.
Right.
Complete bullshit. When I was doing Spartacus, if some writer had handed in a script that was at least 80% close, I would have scooped them up in a hot second.
Interesting.
To know that somebody could write the show. It's tricky because you have to really be able to nail it.
So you got another way, because I was going to say that because I'm hearing that I'm like, that's generally against the common knowledge of don't write a spec of the show you're trying to get on. So if you wanted to get on Big Bang Theory, don't write a Big Bang Theory spec. But when you were saying all that, you've just got the window to hit it is a lot shorter and closer. If you're writing a Big Bang Theory to get on a Friends, I know there's two different eras, but you know what I mean. That's a looser. Oh, I could see the talent, but if you're nailing the characters of these writers, like if someone in Spartacus, those characters so well, they got to really understand the voice and really understand that. But if you nail it, you're good.
You're in. And the next year when I was on Buffy, Joss hired another writer that had written a Buffy spec, Drew Greenberg. So it absolutely can work. But I wouldn't suggest that somebody write a spec script of a specific show specifically to get on that show, because that's not why I wrote spec. I wrote it as a sample to show what I could do. It just so happens that I ended up on Buffy. I would consider that winning the lottery for me at the time. More than anything, when you're writing a spec script, my big advice is you've got to kill it. You have to love this story, and it has to really be something special, not just for the reader, but for you. don't just pound out a spec script because, you feel like you have to. Even with the Deep Space Nine thing, I wrote that one from my heart because I was really excited about this story about a giant Ferengi. And that kind of passion, it's what I look for as a showrunner now when I read a sample.
Right.
Is that I don't care. It could be, I could be looking for writers on a big sci-fi show and get that's like a spec Friday Night Lights. As long as it's good, I don't care. Action, the sci-fi stuff, as far as I'm concerned, anybody can do that. I mean, it's character and dialogue that's difficult.
To watch the rest of this interview, head over to bulletproofscreenwriting.tv.